per all of us, and that rhymes with for all of us. And I'm the candidate for the People's Party for the October election in the Guelph riding. I hope you vote for me. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about free speech and the erosion of free speech in Canada. And I'm going to do that through some tweets of Maxime Bernier's and some news articles I've found around the internet today. So, Maxime Bernier is tweeting, quote, "A People's Party government will repeal all the restrictions on free speech imposed by the Trudeau Liberals and will counteract the left's witch hunt and authoritarian attempts to impose its politically correct dogmas everywhere and on everyone." And this is a Thomas Sowell quote, and he says, "One of the most dangerous trends of our times is making the truth socially unacceptable or even illegal with, quote, hate speech laws." And I want to be clear here. I'm not trying to complain. All I want is a fair conversation, a conversation where name-calling and mudslinging isn't part of the vernacular, where we can all share ideas in a mutually respectful way and come to a conclusion that everybody's happy with. Or at least everybody can live with, right? Not everybody will be happy, but everybody can move forward and live with it. And that doesn't happen if you say maybe, well, that doesn't happen when you toss Nazi or any of the other names that I'll show you very soon around. So Maxime Bernier is tweeting again, quote, "Liberal MPs are seriously proposing a new Kangaroo Court to harass and punish citizens for thought crimes online. This government is waging an all-out war against free speech. Where will it end?" And I'm going to show you this article because it's a very important article. This is a National Post article, and it's reporting, quote, "As Canadian MPs weigh how to police online hate, one proposes new body to give tickets or warnings to offenders. As Canada grapples with how to prosecute existing laws like harassment, defamation, and criminal hate speech in the Wild West, one Liberal MP is proposing the creation of a new judicial body to deal with online offences." I want to point out here, they're not dealing with hate speech in the Wild West. They're dealing with hate speech in Canada. And when it rises to the level of criminality, police get involved, and oftentimes Facebook and Twitter is part of the evidence body. So this is absolutely 100% false. And the idea of creating a quasi-court system has already been done with the Human Rights Tribunal courts in Ontario, and I think Quebec has them too. And it is an absolute travesty of justice. We should put the money into fixing our court system, the traditional court system that has hundreds of years of precedent and has been built up through Western history. Like, honestly, we don't need a new system. This is offensive, and I am offended. Back to the article. Quote, "The criminal code is not an effective instrument," says Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, and I know I'm saying that incorrectly, but I apologize. That's how I'm going to say it for the rest of the article. Back to the article. At a Justice Committee meeting on Thursday, where the MPs are studying the problem of online hate, Erskine-Smith, who's vice chair of the Ethics and Privacy Committee, was subbing in at the justice hearing because of overlapping issues the MPs are dealing with. Rather than embarking on an expensive prosecution for minor offenses, Canada could set up, quote, "an administrative system that is flexible and efficient," Erskine-Smith said. "The blunt instrument of imprisoning someone, putting them through a rigorous criminal trial, is probably not the right answer for enforcing rules against hate speech online in every instance." In an interview with National Post after the committee meeting, Erskine-Smith raised examples like online threats, harassment, and defamation that are obviously breaking Canada's laws, but that rarely get policed. The proposed administrative judicial system could issue tickets or warnings the same way that happens, quote, "if you're drunk in the street and disorderly," he said. However, critics warned that any such system could simply become a mechanism for people to shut down views with which they don't agree. Quote, "My question for you is, who is determining what is hateful?" said Jay Cameron, a lawyer for the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. I scroll down a little bit. Jennifer Klink from Eagle Canada Human Rights Trust said she was broadly in favor of, quote, "a non-criminal administrative law remedy for dealing with hate speech," but said she was also weary of free speech issues. "If it becomes a mechanism for shutting down controversial views," she said, "that could disproportionately affect vulnerable groups like LGBT people." Quote, "There needs to be recourse against the platforms and individuals responsible for the speech," said Klink. "We have a, quote, variety of tools in the toolbox," she said. And they propose basically trying to fine you into oblivion, right? This is, I think, a bad idea, especially in light of a quasi-court. Free speech should be everybody gets to say whatever they want, and you can talk about it. And most of the time, ridiculous, stupid ideas fade away into oblivion and are never heard from again. Back to Mr. Bernier. Want to know what the Liberals have in mind as they push to restrict free speech on social media? Minister Myra Monsef offers my tweet about being blocked by Repeal as an example of online violence and hate that needs to be, quote, "stamped out." So this is the direction that I'm trying to to show you guys, it's okay. Well, it's okay for the liberals to say this is hate speech online, and we're going to get there right now. But it is not okay for Mr. Bernier to call out Ms. Rempel for being a conservative who tolerates some very non-conservative planks and policy measures. And that's interesting because, I mean, that matters, right? And that's not an opinion, and I don't think it's hate speech. But Ms. Monsef does. So who defines hate? Here is Ms. Monsef's Twitter thread. Quote, thread, hashtag Feminist Friday. Let's talk about cyber violence. I want to make sure you know this. Ms. Monsef is a cabinet minister. She was one of the youngest cabinet ministers appointed to Justin Trudeau's cabinet in 2015. Just making sure you're aware of this, okay? Back to this now. In a world where so many of us spend a significant part of our days connected, the violence perpetrated online has real and dangerous consequences. No one is immune to cyber violence. It happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all over the world. In Canada, we are committed to shining a light on this behavior, calling it out, and bringing it to an end. With our G7 partners, we began working on combating online violence last year. This week, the Prime Minister announced an online charter that will help guide the rules of transparent and accountable digital practice. We have a responsibility as an online community, as Canadians, and as leaders to stamp out cyber violence. That's why the Department for Women and Gender Equality is working with partners across the country to prevent and eliminate cyber violence. So what exactly is cyber violence? We often see pushback, a denial of its legitimacy. People see cyber violence as a made-up thing, but research and experience shows it's real, and so are its impacts. I'm going to note here, this is me now, no links to research, no links to anything tangible or anything we can measure. It's just her research and her experience, and welcome to the Twitter thread, so you're not allowed to question. Back to the Twitter thread. Cyber violence is the use of social media, cell phones, and other electronic devices to do harm. It is often repetitive, it is often anonymous, and it has serious and dire consequences. Ready for a few examples? Looking at the Twitter feed of women in leadership, I came across a trove of online violence and hate. Here's one example, and she tries to keep it anonymous, but it's not very anonymous, really. In reply to Urka Khalid, quote, it offends me that someone like you, the architect of the most ridiculous motion ever created in Canadian history, M103, that you sow the seeds of division and hate, and you are praising my charter. You are Canada's colon cancer and will be surgically removed this fall. And another example of hate that needs to be stamped out is, quote, Nikki is as much of a waste of Canadian taxpayer money as Rempel and Dingbatters. I don't know who Dingbatters is, but sure. And here's the totally, definitely very anonymous someone on Twitter saying, finally got blocked by Michelle Rempel at poor little entitled princess could not take the heat anymore. Too many people criticizing her hypocritical virtue signaling and her support for far left authoritarians. Anyone still wondering why I left the CPC? And another one, shut it, bimbo. And how about you swim home from France? Okay, so my question is, none of these are legitimate. All of these are hate and need to be stamped out. Really? Okay, sure. Back to the Liberal cabinet minister. And let's be frank, if you watch the comments on this thread, I'm sure you'll see it in real time. So how are we tackling this issue? Here's one of the projects we're funding, Project Shift. It's led by the YWCA of Canada and includes cross-sectoral partners from across Canada. I'm not going to get into the Project Shift today. I did another video on it, and if you want to explore the link, please do. I think it's a waste of time and money. Back to Ms. Monsef. The RQCALACS is our second national project, working in Francophone communities in Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick to support marginalized women and girls. We have supported regional projects across Canada too, and the private sector is coming on board. It's up to all of us to combat cyber violence. So now it's your turn. What will you do? Cyber violence, like really, honestly. Well, here is the icing on the cake. Here is Chris, the Minister of Keeping It Real. Thanks, Chris, for putting this together. And I thought I was intending to put something like this together to finish my video off. I thought there's not quite enough there. And this finishes it perfectly. The thread on cyber violence and hashtag Canada by Chris, the Minister of Keeping It Real. Thanks for your help, Chris. I appreciate it. Obviously, social media has a problem. Some people will make horrendous statements to each other that they wouldn't say in person, as social media provides an anonymity. Here is my case as to why the Liberal Party is one of the worst offenders. The Liberal Party of Canada has repeatedly made comments that I consider hashtag cyber violence. The comments they make can lead to real-world violence and put Canadians in danger. Truly hateful speech is horrible and should not be used or condoned by any of us. It's also illegal. Here are some examples. GM Butts calling Canadians Nazis. Urqa Khalid calling Canadians racist. Catherine McKenna using the New Zealand terrorist attack to justify calling other people out. Bill Blair using white nationalism to call out Mr. Scheer, I believe. And each one of these comments are firstly dishonest and secondly cyberviolence. Here we go. We're going to look at all of them. Here's Gerald Butts saying the lesson to take from this joke being torqued by InfoWars and other alt-right Nazi friends of the rebel is they're paying attention. Game on. And this is in response to Andrew Achenberg saying he's made it big league now and talking about the conversation between Mr. Butts and the doctor. Urqa Khalid says, fact, United We Roll preaches hate toward minorities and immigrants. Fact, organizers for UWR, United We Roll, have called for the murder of Canadian public figures. I don't think that's true. Fact, Scheer knows this and gladly uses them for his fear-mongering. And this is in response to Andrew Scheer criticized for support of the United We Roll convoy. Okay, I want to say also very clearly, I think a clean political game, Andrew Scheer versus Mr. Bernier, there could be some interesting debates, et cetera, We don't need to stoop to the level of saying Andrew Scheer knows this and uses this for fear-mongering. Andrew Scheer is not a fear-mongering person. Like, what I was saying is, in a straight debate, I think people can make a choice up between centrist Andrew Scheer, because he's got some centrist policies that some of which I like, some of which I don't, and conservative Mr. Bernier, who has a lot of policies that I like a lot more than Andrew Scheer. And he's saying a lot more strongly. He takes a position much more strongly. So I appreciate that more. So what I'm saying is it's interesting to me that having Andrew Scheer, who is not a hate or a fear-mongering person, claiming this is so divisive, it's not even funny. It's very, very concerning. Like, it's very concerning. Here's Catherine McKenna saying, if you're in politics, you should be standing up for all Canadians. That's not a political statement. That's just the truth. I spoke to parents at Ottawa main mosque today whose kids are too scared to pray and go to school in Canada. Meanwhile, Andrew Scheer has to be called out before he can call out Islamophobia. We all need to stand together against racism, hatred, and violence of all kinds, all of us. Quote, hatred has consequences. Could not agree more with Ahmed Hassan. We all have a responsibility to call out Islamophobia, hatred, and intolerance. Use of this language is divisive. This is because Mr. Scheer wouldn't tweet about the Christ Church, or didn't tweet the right words about Christ Church. He didn't call it Islamophobia. And this is the response. You're not left enough. You're not center enough. You're not saying the right words. And so you're hateful. This is so strange from our elected officials. These are the people who are supposed to be leading us. They're shaming us and calling us racists. This is unacceptable. This is Bill Blair saying white nationalism is a threat to Canada and the safety of our communities. At Andrew Scheer panders to people promoting these hateful views. This isn't leadership. Will he finally denounce these irresponsible claims? And so that's the first little thread. And then he says, what if the Liberal Party is successful and even one person believes them? A white person, a Muslim person, anyone? What if their dishonesty leads to someone being murdered? These types of comments can lead to online radicalization, and it's our government doing it. Not only is it the government, but also our media. They are also using the same tactics with this widespread abuse of power, pushing cyber violence as news. They are in fact doing the exact opposite of what media should do: provide the facts and evidence and let consumers decide. Here's some screenshots as evidence. Here's the Toronto Star saying, should conservatives win election by courting climate ignorance and spite, they will kill carbon pricing and huddle in the basement. They will freeze out refugees fleeing war. They will weaponize quiet racism and make us more American. Heather Malek, one of my favorite liberal talking heads. So using fear and division again, this is what they're going to do. This is what you can expect. And really that's not true. Here's the CBC News reporting, why is conservative politics such a natural home for white supremacists? I'm not a white supremacist. I'm not a Conservative Party member either. I'm a PPC candidate. But I want to make sure you understand I'm not a white supremacist, and I'm not a fear-mongering or hate-mongering person. And it's interesting that the CBC is pushing that full bore. Back to the Minister of Keeping It Real. As the government cracks down on social media, with some of it I do agree. The truly hateful comments have no place. Remember, it's the Liberal Party and our Canadian media in tandem creating a very dangerous virtual and real world situation for Canadians. Yeah, that's the truth. These divisive politics, these divisive identity politics have no place in Canada and no place in Canadian politics. I have zero patience for this trash. It's distractive, it's divisive, and it has no place, it should have no place in the public discord. Come to the table willing to talk and willing to listen. That's what I want from my government. That's what I'll deliver if I'm elected in October. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Check back tomorrow. Looks like I'm posting a video a day. Have a wonderful night. Check out ppcguelph.ca and make a donation. We can't do this by ourselves. Thanks for your help. Thanks for watching.